welcome to Creatures of the Night podcast. I am Wolfman Sam here with my buddy John.
What's up, everybody?
And I would just like to start off the podcast by congratulating Elvira on her 40th anniversary.
Nice.
Brad Dourif on his 72nd birthday. A lot of anniversaries in the horror community today.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
yeah. And even this month was 100 years of Nosferatu when it was
Right.
first released.
Right. 50 years of Night of the Living Dead. Night of the Living Dead's 50th anniversary.
Yes,
Uh,
over 50 years.
Yeah. I'd just like to start off by, just talking about what I've been doing on my off time and the movies I've been seeing, and just a little recommendations for you guys, what I like to call the good, the bad, and the ugly. Or in this
Right.
in this case, the good, the okay, or the terrible, and the
Right.
indifferent, or something like that, something to that effect. So I'd have to start off with the good or the great, 1987's Dolls, and it's, I think, done by the same people who did Puppet Master, that kind of thing. Very cool kind of slasher movie dealing with dolls, and the less you know about it, the better. So try and go in this kind of blind, if you can. The bad, I'd have to go with a film called Victor Crowley. Great special effects, great monsters design. We have Keen Hodder playing the monster, but the characters were written to be probably the most insufferable type characters, in my opinion. I mean, you could still give it a watch, don't get me wrong. It's got great special effects and a good monster. But if you really can't stand obnoxious characters, or if you just want to hate watch, some people just like to hate watch. So, I'd give that a pass. And the one I feel indifferent, but it's got some good qualities about, is 1980 or 1981's Maniac. Tom Savini does the makeup. Good story, interesting story about kind of a sympathetic serial killer, but it's one of those stories that has an ending that's kind of weird, so, that's kind of why I feel indifferent. Like I said, the less you know, the better, but that's just some of the stuff I've been doing. But John, what have you been doing? What have you been seeing?
Well, I recently saw the new Batman film, as you can tell by my T-shirt.
Yeah?
And it was, the Batman with Robert Pattinson was awesome. It was great, phenomenal. I mean, rather than saying it was definitely one of the best Batman. It's really, I feel like Batman films are just getting somewhat, better because of how they're really like,
Yeah.
I mean, like they're like trying to make it their own, not without copying too much of what like's been done already by Burton, Nolan, or what
Yeah.
Zack Snyder did. And
I do miss, though, I haven't seen the new Batman, so I don't know, but I do miss when Gotham looked like Gotham.
yeah,
As opposed to
yeah,
Chicago. That's the one gripe I say about the Nolan films. I like the Nolan
yes,
films.
me
But
too. Yeah,
Gotham is not Gotham.
it's basically like if you compare like which James like Bond like series you like the most or better, what you thought was your own like personal.
Right.
It really
I'm a big fan when it comes to Batman. I'm a big fan, the animated series, the
same,
Timverse,
same.
or the Burton, the Burton verse.
Right. But being a diehard Batman fan that I am, of course I'm gonna go check it out for curiosity. What I really
Yeah.
loved about it was there was no like continuity of like the DC. It's its own thing. People don't have to watch Wonder Woman,
And
Aquaman.
that's good. That's
Yes.
good. I'll give it a watch.
Yes.
If I got 3 hours to kill.
It was a great phenomenal like 3 hours. It really like kept you investigating. You were really like into it. You really felt like you wanted to like see more, and even when it ended, you're like, I want more, but it's like, okay, I gotta wait for a sequel within a year or two,
Right.
and I
You
tell
never
you,
know. Yeah.
despite people complaining about Pattinson because of Twilight, push that to the side and go in open mind and see how really talented, good of an actor he really is, Robert Pattinson.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I've heard about Lighthouse, the film he's doing with Defoe, or did with Defoe, I
Yeah,
should say.
yeah,
And I'm curious about that. So I might give that a watch as well as the Batman. So
same.
we'll see. I'll give
Yes.
him a chance.
And Zoe Kravitz, excellent Catwoman. I hate to say better than Anne Hathaway. Sorry, guys.
Well, that's fine because I was never really an Anne Hathaway fan myself. I'm
Fair
more
enough.
of
I
a
mean,
Michelle
she's
Pfeiffer
all right.
guy in
Right.
terms of
Right.
Catwoman, but that's just me.
Right. And also, she's very pretty because she's related to Lisa Bonet. That's her tongue.
Right.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And anyways, also, I watched Halloween Kills. It was okay, not bad, just nothing special. It's nothing groundbreaking. It's just like rehashing what was done already in the original series.
Here's the thing with the Halloween series is how far can you take it?
Right.
Before you have Michael Myers walking around in a walker in a nursing home. I kind of want to see that. I kind of want to see Michael Myers.
He fights the Golden Girls at a retirement home
or something like that. Betty White being the final boss. They'll CGI
yeah.
her in.
Yeah. Blanche will be the first to go because of her sexual desires.
Right. Right. I kind of want to see that, even if it's a parody.
Yeah.
I kind of want to see it.
Yeah. Or he goes to space like they did to Pinhead, Critters, and Jason, and
right.
Fights Machete
old man Michael Myers. Make it happen. Make it happen.
Yeah.
Speaking of dream castings or dream movies, I always wanted to see. It's sort of a weird kind of casting choice for Joker. I've always wanted to see either Willem Dafoe, or here's the really weird one, but I really think he would do a really good job.
Here it goes.
Gary Busey.
Drumroll. I could see it. I think he is a little bit of a nut job in real life, Gary Busey, because of his he was in an accident. He had some drug addiction problems.
Yeah, I can see him being probably the craziest Joker yet. But that's just, but yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
I like to see William Dafoe maybe do an animated film of Joker or something.
If you see his face, he could do a live action.
He can.
Well.
But I just don't know
the
what
closest to Mark Hamill. The Mark Hamill Joker in terms of facial structure, but that's just me. But going back to horror, I figured I'd mention a really interesting another recommendation here. I'm giving all recommendations left and right, but Shopping Mall. For those of you haven't seen it or maybe heard of it, it's kind of a cult classic slasher movie regarding killer robots in a shopping mall in the 80s.
It sounds like RoboCop in some ways.
It's very RoboCop, but it's sort of a comedy in a way because it's it's very goofy and the characters are written very well. They're very funny. They're very likable. It's the exact opposite of Victor Crowley, basically.
Right.
I
only saw 2 or 3 of the Hatchet film. I didn't see. I
gotta catch up on the Hatchet films.
Yeah, I mean they're not the best film. They're just like you said, they're fun, entertaining, stupid movies.
As long as they're entertaining,
Yeah.
My bar for a good film is pretty low.
Right.
I have
because
to just be entertained. That's about it.
Adam Green's the kind of guy who's paying tribute to the films that he grew up watching in the 80s of slasher films and also getting very well-known horror character actors like Tony Todd, Robert Englund, and Kane Hodder.
Kind of similar to Rob Zombie in his
in a way, yes.
B movie actors, Sid Haig, the late great Karen Black.
Yeah. What even though granted I was happy to see Daniel Harris in the second and third, I don't understand what happened to the actors from the first film of who was the last surviving. I mean, I believe me, I love Daniel Harris and I love her in the Halloween films, but I'm just not sure why.
You're talking about Halloween 6?
No, 4 and 5. Daniel Harris,
4
little
5.
Jamie
4
Lloyd.
and 5.
She wasn't in the 6th movie, Daniel Harris, because she didn't like the. So, well, then again, she dodged the bullet there for Halloween 6.
It's been a long time since I've seen Halloween 6, so I don't remember. It's been a long time. That movie was a mess.
It was. They didn't know what the hell they wanted to do with that film. It's like, oh no, let's do this direction. Let's go. No. You're fired. You're hired.
Yeah. The thing though, the silver lining I can say about it, it at least looked cool, visually and auditorially. Soundtrack wise, it had a heavy metal grunge kind of thing to it. But it was also made in '95, so it's about my age. So.
I remember watching James Rolfe on Cinemassacre where he said he made a video, how do you fix Halloween 6? It was interesting, but it's okay, this can go either way. So there's no, people can have their own vision how they see the 6th Halloween film. And Here's a spoiler alert. If it was me, the one thing I would write off is who is the daddy of Jamie Lloyd's character? Not Michael Myers. Sorry, guys. Spoiler alert. I would have that unknown mystery. It could have been like an unknown like cult member who
Yeah,
impregnated her.
it really didn't really matter.
No,
That was like when that was revealed, you just kind of made ugh, like
I cringed.
like
The
yeah, it
first time I
makes you
saw
cringe. It's
that,
like really an incestual plot
yeah.
line, but
Well, not only that, they were also going like the Rosemary's Baby route too. When you think
right,
about it,
they were trying to make it more cultish, more
yeah,
dark, more edgy. The only thing that was missing was somebody in bondage. A little 8 millimeter, Michael Myers.
right. Oh, that's a good movie, 8 mm.
Yeah, that would be a twisted movie, but
It would.
anyway.
Or then again, Pinhead is close to. They almost made Pinhead versus Michael Myers, and I don't
Yeah.
know how Michael Myers would have looked as a Cenobite.
I mean, honestly, out of all the characters, I think that should cross over with Pinhead, I think Freddy. Freddy would be
I could
more.
see that.
I mean, he's dreamlike, but keep in mind his powers are supernatural. They can
Right.
explore. Maybe that's a hell power, power of hell. Maybe he can
Yeah.
find a way to do it in the living world. These are all things. I think if you're planning to do horror crossovers, if we're going to Universal monster movie route, I think the Robert Englund Freddy, of course, the one and only Freddy in my eyes,
Despite
and
despite being a Marvel
Doug
fan,
Bradley's Pinhead.
despite being a Marvel fan and a DC fan, like yes, all the cinematic universe in today's modern world, people are like dismissing how like the Universal monsters what really what started the
Right,
whole
right.
cinematic universe.
Exactly.
Don't get me wrong. Not that I'm saying like who pointing fingers, who's right or wrong. Just we have to give credit to the Universal monsters for the
Yeah,
cinematic
and
universe.
I feel kind of bad because they're trying to start that up again, or they've
Yeah.
been, I should say, and
Oh yeah, right.
it just doesn't have the same magic. It just
No.
doesn't. I don't know. I think they want to make it. They want to make it modern, but they forgot what makes the Universal monster movie the Universal monster movie. It has to be atmospheric and you have to have good writing or decent writing
Yes.
at least.
Right.
It can't be
So-
like
or-
Tom Cruise facing the mummy. Like what? The
Mission
heck?
Impossible style.
What the heck?
I
Like,
have
like I completely forgot about that movie until somebody reminded me. Oh yeah, the other Mummy remake, the one Brandon Fraser one, was good, but it wasn't so much horror as more of like a love letter to Indiana Jones. Had
Yeah.
elements of horror in it, but it was
Right.
more Indiana Jones-esque, which was cool.
I have a confession to make. I've never seen Brendan Fraser's Mummy, and I refuse to watch the Tom Cruise Mummy.
You should watch
Right.
the Brendan Fraser Mummy.
Well,
It's
as a kid,
really
as a
good.
kid as a kid growing up, I was remember like seeing like the trailers and the commercials. Like I was afraid to see it because of like it was
Oh yeah,
in color. Yeah,
growing up, yeah.
I thought it looked. Whereas like Boris Karloff was more like melodrama. That's another thing too. It made those monsters great. They were more melodrama films.
Yeah,
of, like,
and there was more. I think the audience back then was more patient because you
Yes.
had more still shots of scenes of just moody atmosphere. There's one
Yeah.
shot of Karloff in that film where he just has, I don't know if they put black makeup under his eyes or something like that, but you know the shot I'm talking about, the infamous shot where he's just staring. at,
yeah, right.
But
When he like walks.
but yeah, I think it's down to an impatient audience. Not to insult horror fans. I'm not insulting horror fans, but I'm talking
No,
about
me
the
neither.
younger generations that's like, to share a story.
Right.
I had recently rewatched one of my favorite films, The Exorcist, with my sister, and my sister
Nice.
is younger. She's 14,
Right.
and she thought it was the most boring thing in the world.
What?
She was like, well,
Oh my
when does it
God.
get scary? And I'm like,
Well,
just watch.
that's another. That's another thing too. People think that like there always has to be a scare. Not always true. Sometimes horror films have to take their
I
for
hate
time,
jump scares,
patience.
honestly, because I think they're cheap.
right. Okay.
I really do. Like, yeah,
It depends.
yeah. And
It
it
depends on
doesn't
how you do it.
scare me. It doesn't. That's not
Right.
fear. That's you have a knee jerk reaction. Oh, something jumped out and you went, oh, that's not
It's
fear.
right. And speaking of
That's just
Exorcist, it's
that's like testing your reflexes, basically.
right.
You know.
Despite how people think of Exorcist as like it was about religion, like it talks about like religion failing, and it also talks about like faith too. Also, that film and people think of the film as just like exorcism and demons, where there was like a lot more to that film than what people realized.
Yeah. There was so much to that film,
Oh yeah,
and more than some of its parts. And
right.
the story behind it is just you can make a movie around that as well. The making
Right.
of The Exorcist, because
That
the
well,
mishaps and the cursed, it's all part of that cursed film saga. I think
yeah.
they have that somewhere on some service somewhere.
Definitely check out the Amazon documentary series they made on like cursed movies, The
Yeah.
Exorcist,
Well,
Omen, and
that's what I was kind of alluding to, was the cursed film. I don't know
yeah.
where to find it. You probably
It's
do.
on Prime, Amazon
Prime.
Prime.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's where to
I
find
wasn't
it.
sure where to find it. Because
Yeah, it was a really my only complaint about that series. They didn't have one on Rosemary because that's a cursed movie in its own way. I mean, they mention it
yeah.
briefly in one of the
Did
episodes, but I don't know why they didn't give it its own thing.
did they? I would imagine they mentioned Poltergeist, because Poltergeist is a
They did,
big,
yes. They
big
had
one.
a whole dedicated episode of the Curse of Poltergeist, especially how like some of the actors are dead, like the little girl,
Yeah,
the
like
older sister, and
most of the
yeah,
people that were involved in that are
yeah,
mysteriously dead.
they
You know,
are.
but
Yeah, it's people think it's because of the using the real skeletons is why it's cursed, but it's like,
I wouldn't go that
eh,
far.
I don't know.
I mean,
It's really hard to say.
by that token, Ridley Scott should have cast members be killed off because of Alien, because
Right.
he didn't use real aliens, but he
Obviously.
did let his cast members know about the chest burster, and their reactions
Yeah,
were
that's
real.
true. Yeah.
If you go back and watch
Right.
that film, their reactions to it are positively real. It's off script.
It worked.
Yep,
Even when
totally worked.
I was a kid watching even when I was a kid watching that scene, that was like one of the most like unexpected scenes in a horror film. Not expecting where they're about to eat dinner or lunch, and all of a sudden,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It wasn't
Actually,
written in the script or anything.
Space. I remember Space. That was like Spaceballs was my intro to that before I saw the real thing as a
Yep,
kid. Like I didn't
me
understand the
too.
reference until
Me too.
get this guy some Pepto Bismol.
Such a great movie. But
It is,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, the thing is, horror films, why we love them, it goes back to, at least for me, I we kind of talked about this off camera, but we were kind of both afraid of horror films. Like,
Yes.
I
It's
had
just, and
watched
it's
my
funny.
first horror film when I was 14. It was the
Right.
original Nightmare on Elm Street. And I had my dad to thank for that. He was always the
Right.
one pushing, like, oh, show him The Exorcist, show him The Entity, show him this. And my mom's like, no, don't, But as a kid growing up, I also was fascinated by the monsters, despite being afraid of the world of horror. I kind of made.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid, I made like a fan fiction Avengers-esque team up with all the slashers and all that stuff.
Right. Or for me as a kid, I used to like play with my action figures and pretend they were like fighting the slasher villains, or
of course.
yeah, Michael
And
Myers versus Batman,
and it's funny to dive in what scared you as a kid, because what scared you as a kid, like I was terrified of Judge Doom as a kid.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
Roger Rabbit isn't a horror film, but there
no,
were
but
certain things I'm sure everyone here could relate. Certain things as a kid that maybe not have been horror related, but frightened you as a kid.
well, I always found like Snow White scary when the Wicked
Snow
Witch.
White.
Yeah.
Snow White is scary if you're a kid. Yeah, Snow White can be
Yeah.
scary.
Oh, it did,
Um,
or the Wicked Witch
I
from Wizard
as
of
a
Oz.
kid, I was always afraid of the girl from Finding Nemo, Darla.
Really? No,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
remember
as a
being
kid,
freaked
as a
out
kid.
by.
As a kid,
Okay,
I was.
okay, that's understanding.
And,
Okay,
because they built her up. You got to keep in mind, you got to go back to being a kid. They built her up to be a serial killer, a fish. And they have the cracked picture and the building her up, and she enters the room to the Psycho theme, you know. So as a kid, that was terrifying.
Right.
But
right.
yeah, Judge Doom was probably the thing that haunted my little kid nightmares, and I actually remember it differently. And this is how like psychological, like
the Mandela effect.
Mandela effect. John knows what I'm talking about. The Mandela effect.
Yes.
The thing when you remember something completely different than what it was, and as a kid, I remember that scene. I'm gonna give big spoilers away for those who have not seen Roger Rabbit, but the ending of that film, Judge Doom melts, and how I remember it and how it actually was so much more visceral. Like I remember as a kid, like his eyeballs melting, and you know all this stuff, like really not bloody, but like really visceral and scary kind of stuff. When in reality he just melted like the Wicked Witch.
Right.
But
that scene.
It's
really,
fascinating.
That seemed like horrified me as a kid.
Yeah.
But I think also it was the biggest like twist of how like that Judge Doom was the tune that killed Eddie's brother.
Oh yeah. And those red eyes, I remember as a kid, scared me.
Yeah.
I killed your brother. I talked like this. Anyway.
Yeah.
So
when you look at like 80s kids movies, they had a lot of like even Pee Wee. The first Pee Wee Herman that was directed by Tim Burton had like the large Mars.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's funny when you think of what scared you as a kid and
what
kind of shaped you into being a horror fan.
In some ways,
today
that could relate. My background story for my first love of horror as a kid. Before it's funny saying this, especially how like we're doing a podcast on horror movies, and look at a kid right here who hated horror films as a kid. I was afraid of everything. Goosebumps,
me
Michael
too,
Myers.
Me too. I remember
Nightmare Before Christmas.
I remember. Now I don't count this as a horror film, but I remember watching Gremlins for the first time and kind of being scared.
I didn't see Gremlins until I was 19 years old because I was afraid to watch it because
I watched it when I was like 8.
Wow, you had bigger balls than me.
you know, we were like, oh, it's Gremlins, you know, because that's what your parents would say. Oh, it's Gremlins, it's fine, it's Gremlins.
Right. Although I did survive watching Beetlejuice as a kid. Beetlejuice didn't bother me for some reason as a kid. I don't know why. That was like one of the few things that didn't scare me.
Beetlejuice was cool as a kid. It's cool now.
Yeah, it is. Still is. Oh yeah, absolutely.
You can't go wrong with early Burton.
Yeah. Luckily for me, when I started watching the Universal monsters, that was like a good way to start for a horror fan to like ease your way rather than like watching something with so much gore and blood.
Me, jumped right in. It was Nightmare on Elm Street first, and then Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the rest is history. And you know, I spent the entire summer watching B horror films of the 70s.
Right.
That's where I discovered Phantasm, and you know.
Right. Then when I was 11 years old, I finally watched the first Halloween film, and that really freaked me out as a kid. And then when I was 16, I was finally like not afraid. That was like the beginning of my horror phase, where I was finally marathoning all the slashes of Freddy, Jason, and Chucky. It's like, okay, I'm not afraid anymore. I can watch these films and not be scared. And
well, like I just said, you know, with me it was a little different. I just jumped in once I got a taste for it. I just jumped in and.
Right.
The rest is history. I was a horror fan for life.
Yeah, exactly.
But in terms of film, getting back to the whole fear aspect and what makes us like horror movies, at least for me, I love good atmosphere, good acting, good story.
Me too.
All that stuff.
Yes.
And I will share a film that actually disturbed me. In my adulthood, didn't frighten me, but disturbed me, which I think is harder to do. But Eraserhead, David Lynch's Eraserhead, probably one of the most disturbing films I've seen. And it was a film where I watched it, and I needed a good week to just mentally adjust to what I just seen.
Mental break.
It was like a bad fever dream. You know, you didn't know what was going on. No. For those of you that haven't seen it, again, much like most of the films I recommend here, go into them blind. Go into knowing nothing, because that's the best experience.
Right.
You know, you'll never know what to expect, and that's again going into my other aspect and really why I love the horror genre. And John would probably agree with me on this. It's a unpredictable genre. It doesn't play by the rules of any kind. You know, the hero could die. There could be love, heartbreak, all this stuff. Because comedy and all the other genres have to kind of play by some form of formula.
Yeah.
It's, and that's one of the reasons why I really like horror films, and why a lot of other people like horror films too, I would imagine.
Yeah. When people tell me that, whenever I tell people I love horror films, they're like, "Oh, they're so scary." I'm like, "Watch the news, especially what happened in recent events."
Yep. Well,
that's the real horror movie.
Some people don't have a taste for it. That's all right.
True.
That's okay. But always give it a shot. You'll never be surprised, because that's the other thing too. Is horror movies are so vast. They're much like music. There's so much subgenre and different types of horror films. So yeah, you might not like the slashers or the gore and splatter, but you might like the psychological stuff too.
In the first Scream film, I found it a little bit of an insult when Neve Campbell says that they're all the same. Not true. There's a variety of horror movies.
No,
if she thinks that every horror film is a slasher film, then she must be not a diehard, or she really does not know anything about the horror genre.
Yeah,
or character.
Well, that's kind of like saying now maybe some people would disagree with me. It's kind of like saying that every horror film nowadays kind of sucks, which I disagree.
I wouldn't say that.
You just have to look.
Yeah.
There are
still a lot
some
there
gems.
I haven't seen yet.
There are some gems today. But they're not. It's not a mainstream thing. Not to sound like a hipster. I'm no hipster. I'm no like, let me tell you about this foreign film with subtitles. It was probably done by people you never heard of and all that stuff. No, I'm not like that. I actually detest people like that. I'm just like, just get out of your own butt, please. Just like, grow up, really?
Yeah.
But anyway, is there anything else you want to touch on about?
Let's see. Well, recently I watched the worst series finales I want to cover, because I watched the finale to Seinfeld, and rewatching the finale to Seinfeld, it hasn't gotten any better since the last time I saw it, like almost 10 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, how could you... I would assume everybody here has probably seen Seinfeld,
Right.
How could you top Seinfeld? I mean,
you can, and
had
also
great episode after great episode
after
great episode.
It did.
And how could you end it?
It was. I think the lame. I think it was the lamest ending to a series where they went to jail. It's like this makes no sense at all, like whatsoever.
No sense. But some series, it's hard to end. As much as I like Conclusion myself, I love Conclusion. I don't like a series to go on forever, because then you have a bunch of old people being like, "Oh, we gotta do this again." It's like Rocky 5000.
I think
you're gonna do it again, Rocky. You can't even walk. Anyway, you're walking around with a walker rock.
But I feel like the problem with trying to bring back an old
sequel, the sequel syndrome that Hollywood and a lot of other films just do, like the Saw. They just recently came out with another Saw.
Right.
And I'm just like,
how many more Saw
I haven't seen the first one, and that's the only one I know.
Really?
I know people say that are good, so I'll get around to seeing the first one.
Yeah,
but
one and two is the best.
Maybe the second one.
Two is the best of the series. I only stopped after 3. I haven't kept up with it since then. Like I didn't really like it's not
like the Saw series.
The way
it's just done to death.
Right.
Chucky.
It's not like the way I felt with like Chucky or Freddy or Jason or Michael, where I kept up with those. I didn't really like catch up. I only saw like the first 2 and the third. It was like, I'm not that desperate. It's just gonna like repeat itself.
Movies like that, like Hostel, you can only keep your attention for so long. You know, it's like, how many times can I watch somebody's head explode or you know, be put in a death trap for so long before I'm just like, this bores me.
Right, yeah, it's well, at least with like Michael, Freddy, and Jason, those had like some entertaining like quality values of like some cheap,
an interesting story. Not that I'm pretty sure that the I know the Saw fan base is like, they've been following the story for like forever,
probably,
and they're like, no, it's actually good. Look, because they have a big giant conspiracy board linking all the movies and stuff, probably.
Yeah, like I said, Saw I just never really like caught up with or became the biggest
I'll watch
diehard
the first one. I will eventually watch the first one. So
I think the first one is because of its like big twist ending that no one saw coming. But I'm not going to spoil it right here.
Speaking of sequels and remakes, I hear they're going to remake Nightmare on Elm Street, which I'm just like, groan.
Which that ought to be interesting.
Groan. The first remake sucked. I'm sorry to say, you know.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's fans. I'm sure there's fans. You suck. Anyway,
a friend of mine likes the remake. Not that he's saying it's the best. He just thought it was not as bad.
In my opinion, I always liked Robert Englund, even at the worst Nightmare on Elm Street movie.
Yeah.
Like, I have a soft spot for Freddy's Dead, the same way I have a soft spot for Seed of Chucky. It's funny,
right?
You know? it's a bad horror film. It's not going to scare you, but it's funny. It's entertaining.
Yeah. For me, the first one is the best, a masterpiece, and really horrifying. Whereas the sequel's got more like comedy and like a Tex Avery cartoon.
But I have to say though, if we're talking about Nightmare on Elm Street, I have to bring out Dream Warriors, and we did actually discuss Dream Warriors a bit on the last podcast. So I won't talk about Dream Warriors that much. I'll just say, in terms of sequels, that's probably my favorite sequel.
Right, I agree. And also, New Nightmare was pretty good.
Yeah, New Nightmare was pretty good, and of course,
Freddy vs. Jason.
Heather Langenkamp in that film. Oh,
yeah. You really have a big crush on her, don't you?
Well, not a crush. Listen, she's a beautiful lady, not a crush.
She is. She is a pretty one.
But yeah,
basically that was like a day in the life of Heather.
Even though she's older, she's still pretty.
Yeah. That was like a day in the life of Heather Langenkamp, and then eventually it went to like where Freddy was coming to life outside of the film, like the movie within the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually a pretty cool movie, New Nightmare, for those who haven't seen it. It's like a movie
it was pretty
within
cool.
a movie, that kind of thing, but it's done right, if that makes sense. It's a concept. I think it was one of the first to do that concept, but do it well.
Something like that, right?
So for those who haven't seen it.
It also came out before when Wes Craven did Scream.
Right. It was before Scream, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like Scream is like a hit or miss among like horror fans. It's either like loved or hated, and
I like it.
It's okay. I mean, not the best. I enjoyed it. It's okay.
I actually have a soft spot for the third one. I thought the third one was pretty good, but after that,
the fourth one
interest. Well,
I didn't see the new one that came out.
After the third one, I lost interest. It was like Scream 4 or Scream 5. They bringing back what's your face. Anyway,
I feel like sometimes we give up on. I feel like after a while you give up on franchise, and when they're just like running out of ideas and butchering to death.
Especially when there's a remake like the newer Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And it's just it doesn't do it for me.
I didn't bother.
It's a no for me, dog. It's a no for me. To quote
after
Jackson.
After the 2013 Texas Chainsaw, I just said I'm
done
with the series. I had enough, and the same with Chucky.
Because when I heard that they were remaking it again after the 2003, now I like the 2003 and the beginning.
That's okay. The beginning one I wasn't too crazy about. The 2003 remake I was okay for me.
R. Lee Ermey though really makes that movie, and again
he did.
Again, I feel like I'm on a recommendation tear, but for those of you who haven't seen it, go see it.
That's okay.
You'll end up with a whole list by the time you're done with this podcast.
Yes,
whole list. You'll be like, okay, I gotta see this one and this one. You
Yeah.
told me to see that one.
The bucket list.
Yeah. So you won't be you won't be deprived of any horror films you have or haven't seen, or maybe you just want to rewatch something.
Right.
You know, things get
Right,
lost in the
right.
memory hole. You know, sometimes.
Yeah, I think once in a while we all enjoy to watch an old horror film from the past, reminding
Yeah.
us of like nostalgia and
Yeah. Every
yeah.
Halloween I watched
Like how
the
recently I
original
watched.
Invisible Man.
Nice,
Yeah,
nice.
Claude
Every
Rains.
year I just try to watch whatever I can. If I used to marathon all of them as a kid, like all the basic ones, and then I got them all on Blu-ray, DVD to watch them like anytime I want.
Yep. Yep. And with the
Yeah.
advent of streaming
Yep.
services, you could watch them anytime you want. Any and all.
That's the beauty of owning all of them, and right. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'll watch some of the, like the lesser known, like crappy ones, like Ghost of Frankenstein.
Oh yeah, and
and
I've seen some crappy
and-
ones. We can. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
we can make that into the next podcast. The worst horror films we've ever seen.
yeah, probably the next
It's
one.
probably gonna tick off
Yes.
some people, but that's okay. Listen, if you like those
Probably.
films, it's no
That's
problem.
fine.
It's no problem. You go ahead and like those films. These are our opinions.
There was this film I saw recently called Matinee with John Goodman, directed by Joe Dante. It was like a nostalgia film and a tribute to like the time
Right.
period of where you had like these kids growing up in the 60s during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and they went to the movies for escapism. And John Goodman plays a fictional version of William Castle, who was a very well-known horror director and probably considered the Hitchcock of horror directors, because he was
Right.
like known for his gimmicks and getting his audiences involved, like showing people a good time. And he seemed like a chill dude. William, I would have loved to have met that guy if he was alive.
I'm sure he sounded like a chill dude, but I don't know.
Yeah, he did sound like a. I don't know. It's hard to say. He just seemed like so chill to like work with or be around all the time. Like he didn't seem like a
But
kind
I'll
of guy
check it
who
out.
like.
Matinee.
Yeah, Matinee with John Goodman. Really,
Okay.
I mean, not the. It's a good movie. It's a good like nostalgia film. Very.
Yeah.
You know, brings
I'll
you back
check
to
it
your.
out.
Yeah, brings you
sure,
back to your
for
childhood
sure.
in some ways, in different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also loved all the like the references of like the sci-fi and B movies and tributes.
Yeah, of course. You know, I mean, this isn't technically horror, but the new Ghostbusters kind of does a nice tribute to Harold Ramis and stuff like that.
I still have
The-
not
the
seen that yet.
Afterlife. So, for those of you who haven't seen it, again, I sound like a
haven't.
broken record. For those of you who haven't seen it, go watch it. It's gonna be my catchphrase. I'm gonna have a
Yeah.
catchphrase, a T-shirt. For those of you
Right.
who haven't seen it, anyway.
or people make a drinking game out of this, but just don't drink and drive while listening to this podcast.
Yeah. Don't drink and drive every time I say.
No,
for those
don't,
of you who haven't
don't.
seen it.
Right.
Anyway,
My recommendation.
he's giving recommendations again. I can't stop him. All right. Hey, John, do you want to wrap this up?
Actually, there's two things I want to wrap this up about briefly. This is something I remember watching on Cinemassacre's short-lived podcast. Was Steve Urkel and Snoop Dogg on weed?
Yeah, I saw that. You
That was
sent
like-
that to me, and that was.
I had to just bring this up because I just think it's a weird combination. Urkel
it's a
and Snoop
surreal
Dogg.
moment. It's
It is.
it's like if I don't know, Batman and Sonic the Hedgehog or something like that are in the same room together.
or like you said to me, what's next? Steve Urkel snorting cocaine with Tony Montana
yeah,
from Scarface.
snorting cocaine with Scarface, you know. This is new, the new Urkel cocaine. Anyway,
And also, I watched the Oscars last night, even though I'm not the biggest. I mean, it was a. I mean, I don't hate the Oscar. I just want to know who wins. I don't care about all
right,
this
right.
like entertainment stuff they
Yeah,
have to offer. And
I
it was
kind of
a
gave
little-
up on the Oscars myself.
Yeah,
I have not
yeah.
paid attention to Hollywood in a long time.
yeah, you didn't miss much. It kind of got too political and too crazy with their
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
And also, as you probably heard, Will Smith punched Chris. I mean, I can sort of see that, but it was like really necessary to like get so
wasn't he
violent at
telling
the
a
Oscar.
joke or something like that? And
Yeah,
I don't know.
basically what happened, because Jada Pinkett, like her head is, he didn't realize that Jada Pinkett has some kind of like condition with her hair or something, and he said, "I'll see you in G.I. Jane 2," and And then after when he said that,
Chris Rock got slapped. But I mean, you
Yeah.
know, listen, that's
everybody
their
hates
business.
Chris.
That's their business. I
Yeah.
could care less, especially about your e-drama. So
Yeah.
for sure.
I mean, I don't think Chris. The way there was two sides of the story. Chris was just doing his, stand-up routine, going out there trying to
Right. He wasn't doing anything.
give the
He
audience
wasn't
a good
trying to like
time.
insult the guy. He was just being a comedian.
No, of course not.
But
And Will Smith, I mean, I like and respect him, but a little bit too far with the slapping at the Oscars
Yeah,
and cursing.
yeah.
It's like, okay, come on, this is, yeah.
you know, but that's their business. But anyway, is there
Oh,
anything?
yeah.
Is there anything more you want to add before we wrap this up?
No, I guess we're pretty good. I think we'll have to work on the next podcast for next time. Like you
Oh
said,
yeah, sure. For sure.
worst horror movies we saw.
Yep, the worst of the worst. But anyways, I've been Wolfman Sam. This has been my buddy John, and we are Creatures of the Night. I'll see you guys later.